how iGaming operators and providers should position themselves in 2021. Find out during the free webinar, iGaming, the ever-changing industry, together with our prominent experts, Peter Ekmark, Jesper Kärrbrink, Tomas Backman. They will also discuss how can an operator enhance a digital marketing strategy? How can the industry adapt to the new normal? How to find a balance for sustainable business scaling in the year to come. Join them on November 17th at 1500 CET. Robust conversation guaranteed.
And we are live. Hello everyone. And welcome to our today's webinar, which is brought to you by InternetVikings. Our topic today is iGaming, the ever-changing industry. And we're going to discuss regulations, trends, marketing, and much more. Our speakers today are three prominent experts with huge experience in the sector. So, first of all, Mr. Peter Ekmark, CEO of InternetVikings. Peter's 14-year experience includes collaboration with platform providers, game developers, payment systems, and affiliates. In 2019, Peter joined InternetVikings as the CEO. His profound understanding of business development and focus on digital marketing ensured the stable growth and of the company even through the toughest periods of lockdowns. Also with us today, Mr. Jesper Kärrbrink, founder and chairman at Green Jet Games. Jesper is one of the pioneers of iGaming industry. Since 1993, he has been the CEO of several companies, including Svenska Spel and Mr. Game. In 2017, he founded gaming studio Green Jet Games. Jesper has also been acting in a number of boards and is the co-author of 3 books. And last but certainly not the least, Mr. Tomas Backman, Group CEO at Hero Gaming. Tomas has been in the iGaming industry since 2011 and held several C-level positions. In April 2018, he took over the role of CEO for Hero Gaming, and since then, the company has seen a rapid growth with monthly revenues increasing by 400%. But before we get our speakers, let's talk about you. Please share with us where are you from and what is your name and what segment of the iGaming industry you represent. Operators, affiliates, suppliers. Maybe you are not from iGaming and came to learn more about the industry. So let's get to know each other. Please be active, don't be shy, and type your answers in the chat box. So let's see who we have today with us. Anyone? Who will be the first one? UK Cloud Services, Jason Bramford. Hello, Jason. Cyprus operator Thomas. Hello, Thomas. Good to have you with us today. Andrew Collins. Hi, everyone. From Sweden. Operator. Wonderful. Katie from Octopay, payment service provider. Harold from UK, CEO, Sweden affiliate, Anders. Paul from USA, platform developer. Wonderful. An amazing international audience, an amazing international team we have today is gathered here. And it is good to have everyone with us. 2 quick announcements before we start. First of all, our speakers will try to answer your questions, so please type them in the chat box. And second one, everyone who will stay with us till the end will be able to book free personal consultation with Mr. Peter Ekmark and receive his expert advice on the matter of hosting data and securing the visibility of your brands. And now, with no further ado, I will give the stage to our speakers. Gentlemen, we are live. I want to say, let's get ready to rumble, but I won't. So, we are live. Let's start the discussion.
Thank you, Volodymyr. It's a pleasure and nice to have Jesper and Tomas aboard. It's been a while, at least since we sat in the same room. Technically speaking, we are at least in the same digital room now, I suppose. I am present in Malta, and I believe so is Tomas, and Jesper is calling in from Stockholm today. We have all been in the industry for quite some time, this ever-changing industry. And at least for the just shy of 15 years I was active, I think the biggest change that we went through was regulation. When I started, the whole industry was basically unregulated, and MGA just took its form. And that's how I got into the industry. And there's been a lot of change for all these years. And Jesper and Tomas, regulating is a very interesting topic. I think to some extent, some markets have become over-regulated. But what do you think about that? What is over-regulation?
If I might start there, over-regulation is taking something good and turn it into something really bad. Simple as that.
So do you have any examples of markets that, in your opinion, has become over-regulated? Taking something good and turning it into something
I'm
bad.
sitting in one of them right now, Sweden, of course. We see that. We can talk about canalization in Sweden and see it. The actual canalization is, I would say, in the casino industry is around 50%, which in itself is a measure of failure. So here we can clearly state that the over-regulating part did not work. And I think Germany is stepping in the same direction right now. UK might be to some extent, depending on what they are deciding. The role model where it really works is Denmark. It has a fantastic regulation with a high level of canalization and a long-term visibility for the operators to work on. But even there are rumors of changing the regulations now. So let's see what happens.
And Tomas, you have been quite a big player in Sweden, I believe. So you have been there before and after regulation. And what's your perception on this topic?
Yeah, I think we're a top 10 operator in the Swedish market. But for me, over-regulation is basically when you're creating so many obstacles for the customers. So, they seek a better experience outside of the licensed market. As simple as that. And I think Sweden is a perfect example where we unfortunately can see that happen, which becomes a bit tricky when you're getting when the FTA is pushing the licensed operators a lot around consumer protection, etc. But in all essence, the consumer protection is zero on the Swedish market, where you can just spelpaus on the first day, and the second day you Google casino with no spelpaus.
Yeah, that's not great, of course. During the early phases of the pandemic, I think there were some additional restrictions imposed in Sweden. Has they been working, in your opinion?
They've been working in the sense that they have pushed more vulnerable players into places where they shouldn't be. But I wouldn't say that they have been working as a canalization or a regulation with the purpose of canalization, gambling back into a more controlled environment. On the contrary, they have failed that totally.
I think to add on what Jesper said, just before the restrictions came in, Boost, which is the trade body of the licensed operators in Sweden, they ordered their own channelization report where they split it up the different verticals, and they estimated the channelization of casino to be 65%, while now, as Jesper said, it looks like at all the numbers that like the channelization is down to 50, driven by the restrictions. So what they are actually doing actively is to reduce the consumer protection.
And the interesting part here is that what happens here, let's say that the problematic gamblers are still problematic gamblers. So they will show up in the statistics as problematic gamblers. So they see that this increased regulation didn't work. We have the same amount of problematic gamblers as we had before. Now we're going to impose even more regulations and just pushing more and more. So they are not using the data, and then they are skewing the data if they're going to use it in the future. So whatever happens now we are might sit in a rather bad position unless the politicians are taking some clever advice and actually listen to people that understands this industry. And then I don't mean the three of us; they could ask other people.
But why is then the regulation so different, even in between different countries in Europe? I would say it's a landscape that even I have trouble keeping track of. It's like the COVID pandemic. All the countries try to protect their people in different ways. But why is it so different? This is just gaming, and we've had gaming since, well, the start of time.
The dream, of course, would be to have a European regulation, but that will never happen. And then having local regulations, there will always be local differences in how people perceive this problem and this issue. But the more they looked at data, the more the same it would have been, because it's the same data in entire Europe, basically. So my short answer to this is the lack of using data. That's why we see so different. Then if you're not using data, you have to use your opinion or your feeling or what's politically correct, etc. And then it becomes differences between the countries.
Yeah, and I think to add on to that, it's depending on the landscape so say Sweden, for an example, where you had a lot of operators pushing a lot of TVCs, etc., where you had a lot of complaints from the population, meaning it becomes very easy if you want to run more of a populistic approach of saying, this is something we need to stop, and then you focus on those areas. So I think that definitely has to do why the approach is different from different countries, depending on how it looked like before the regulation as well.
And so, I agree with Thomas. I agree with Thomas. And to add on that, it's for a politician, you can't lose hitting on gaming, but you have nothing to gain if you are pro gaming, and that's a problem in itself.
That is a very valid comment, I would say. But it sounds like you are, well, by definition, over-regulation is not a good thing, of course. But what is then a good regulation in your opinion? What actually works? What's best for the customer? Jesper, you've been working with Svenska Spel and Mr. Green, and those are two quite different companies, at least from that perspective.
Yes, but there are good things. First of all, regulation is a good thing per se. We should have a regulated market. That's a good thing, because then we know the rules, we can protect the players, etc., etc. But the good regulation then makes sure that operators are taking responsibilities on one side for not making people to overconsume, to detect problematic gamblers, affordability checks, etc., etc. That's you can impose that in the regulation. And then on the other side, then the regulator also has to make sure that you are actually pushing out the non-regulated operators via payment methods, etc., etc., etc. So a good regulation has a balance. You offer the best games, but you offer them in a responsible way. And you offer them in the way that the players want to play them, but you make sure that the players are not playing them too much. That's a good regulation. And as I said before, all early regulation has been there with a high level of channelization. England, Denmark, Sweden started really well. But then people start to listen to the political winds and the political climate, and then you start screwing this regulation a bit harder and a bit harder and a bit harder. And on the other hand, you lose the vulnerable players out to the black market. It's so obvious.
Yeah, I think, Peter, to add on to that, I think a healthy tax rate, high channelization, and make sure to take care of the problematic gamblers. I think that's a good summary of what is a good regulation. At the same time, I think it's important also to mention that SGA, Swedish Gambling Authority, they don't have an easy job here, because the problem with the channelization in Sweden is a lot of it has to do with how the laws are written. So they are basically saying it's not illegal to offer gambling services in Sweden as long as you don't have Swedish krona and you don't market yourself in Swedish and so forth. And at the same time, they have not used the tools which they probably will in the future, where they can also license the B2B suppliers. Because if that happens, we will go from a 50% channelization up to a plus 80% right away, but probably going steadily up to 90%.
Yeah, I see. Well, for me, I believe that once you lose the understanding for the rules, that's when it goes problematic. I struggled as a Swede to understand, for instance, when the latest restrictions came about, why they would only restrict online casinos with a deposit limit and not trotting, for example. Why would that actually make a difference? Do you see a difference in between different gaming types?
I could see my own bank account because my losses on trotting went like this.
That's good. No, but this is all back to stigmatization. The online casino business is very stigmatized, while the trotting is a part of the Swedish culture. So it's much more easy to gain political points on restricting online casino. And we should also remember it's a fairly small part of the population playing online casino, 7, 8, 9, perhaps 10%. So you are not playing with the masses. But if you go for trotting or football, that would be, then you're suddenly messing with 60, 70% of the population, or 30, 40% of the population.
I think the gaming industry in itself has been extremely agile and adapting to this new normal, at least when it comes to the pandemic, recently very quickly. But again, when you see different markets and how they develop, you can take Germany, for example, it is a bit puzzling why they would, for example, restrict live casino, whereas in Sweden, live casino is actually perceived as a good gaming type, as it's a slow type of game. It's not like a slot machine where you can very quickly progress different slots. What's your take on that? Why is, again, the rules perceived so differently? Why are Germans so different from Swedes in that perspective? Why would you?
Once again, they are lacking data and knowledge.
Yeah,
So
I don't have anything.
if you would put in time boundaries for the amount of spins you could do, would that help to slow it down?
No.
It would just make it complicated.
I mean, I have a brilliant idea. Why don't we ask the winemakers to start making? They're not allowed to make good wines, because then there will be less alcoholics. We all know that it doesn't work like that, and it's the same with the game. If a game gets boring, people don't stop playing; they play it elsewhere. And the problem is that those who already have a problem or predestinated to become a problematic gamblers, they will find their games to play.
I think that's very true. That's also why the market is so competitive, because we all know that if it doesn't work, they will go elsewhere. It's the same thing with channelization, right?
Yes.
You just go elsewhere. That's the digital challenge.
So once again, let the players play in a safe and controlled environment. And back to what Tomas said before, to get the players and help the government to help these players with the problem and put standards and demands on operators how to detect them and how to get them to play less, etc. Take them out of the marketing loop. There's so many things you can do.
And I think, Peter, to add on to that, and it goes for all markets, all locally regulated markets, to have a close dialogue between the regulator and the industry to actually come up to, so what is working? Why should we have rules why should we have regulation where so much is up for interpretation and it's basically impossible to read and to understand what they actually... Personally, I can't understand it. Why can't we just sit around the table together and say, so what do we mean here? So take bonuses in Sweden as an example, which came out from the start and it was very unclear. Different operators interpreted it in a different way. And even some of them even asked the regulator, are we doing the right thing here or is this the wrong thing? And the answer was fine. And that's not the right way to build a regulated market long-term and a long-term sustainable market, because the operator in this case, I think, did a very good thing. They asked proactively, we're doing this. Is this okay? Because otherwise we will stop. And the answer is fine. That doesn't create a good environment between the regulator and the industry, which it should be, because the goal should be the same.
So in all of this, does MGA, the Malta Gaming Authority, still have a place in the market. This is more or less where it all started. That's when actually you had the first license, at least from a pan-European point of view. But their role, at least in my opinion, is diminishing as we are getting more locally regulated market, which does have very different rules.
Of course, their role will be less and less important with more and more local regulations. At the same time, they have a regulation that has been working pretty good for quite some time. So I really hope, but still, Malta with the ecosystem you built in Malta with all the competence that is gathered on this island. I think Malta still has a strong position. But there will be fewer and fewer. There will be markets replacing the MJ license, so to speak, in Europe with their own regulator. I mean, Belgium is coming up, Netherlands is coming up, Germany is coming up, etc., etc. So absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with that. It will be obviously naturally there will be fewer and fewer markets where you use the MJ license, but you still have an infrastructure that is built for gaming on the island, and you have the talent pool and so forth. So Malta definitely has a place in the iGaming industry.
That's a good thing to hear. Staying for a while longer than you two, Thomas.
Same here.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just ego when I'm saying it because I love living in Malta.
Yeah, but I say the same from Sweden, so we can.
All right, let's leave regulation for now and talk a bit more about marketing and how it applies to this ever-changing industry. Lots have happened. I think that back in the day, the number of slots you offered were actually a USP for an operator. Is that still the case? How many slots can we actually produce, or how many variations of a single slot? I'm not sure how many are produced today, but it's probably in the region of 200 per month or something like that. What's your take on this? And what kind of games should we need to expect in the near future?
Yeah, should I go first?
Absolutely. You're welcome.
Yeah, I think the supply is definitely higher than the demand today, and you know, the amount of new slots. I think Jesper mentioned in our prep meeting, it was what did you say, 200 slots
per month? Yeah.
Per month, which is obviously too many. But I also think that this will kind of self-regulate automatically. Something that will also happen, which we are doing ourselves. So last year we did with Hero Gaming an investment in a GSP supplier to actually start creating our own content as a way to increase our margins. Looking at the gaming industry as a total, you know, the operator side, we are the ones suffering on the margins, while the larger GSPs and affiliates and so forth, they have much higher margins. So we need to try and find new ways on how to drive our margin up. And if that is buying exclusive content from smaller game studios, or if it's developing our own games, one way or another, we need to do it. And I think that will also be part of the kind of self regulation, or what to call it.
But yeah, I agree, totally agree. There's too many slots to be produced now, and there's a. I will come back to that later on, but there's a misunderstanding about the Netflix model and gaming. But to start with the number of games, the number of games is perhaps that it's a problem in itself. But what is more a problem is that they all look the same. It's basically the same, and you see how players now playing it for a couple of spins, and then they go to the next one, and they play it for a couple of spins, and then they go to the next one. I mean, you have a situation where players not even coming into the bonus round because they get tired and then take the next one and the next one, and it's just flooded everywhere. So, but this will self-regulate. I mean, it's an overproduction right now. This supply, as Thomas is saying, is much higher than demand, and that there are some economical laws that will fix that over time. And we also see the consolidation within the operator industry. That consolidation has now started within the supplier industry. And with larger operators, you have to become larger as a provider as well, because it's this war about margins that Thomas is mentioning. And so we will see there's a trend right now that this I think we see the peak. And also I hope, because this is what Green Jade is, we are doing different games. We are doing arcade skill games, and those are games that totally differs from the slots. It could be a match-free game where you bet on every match, or a puzzle game where you stake on every place puzzle. So it's a combination of a slot or a casino game and a skill game. We have to go that route. I'm not saying that Green Jade will be the one succeeding with this and having or being the one breaking through here, but someone will, because there is a need for new games. And then back to what Tomas said about producing content, and that's the Netflix model. There's been so much talk about we should be a bit more like Netflix in the industry, and I kind of, come on, what is Netflix? Netflix is a hub or a portal for film and TV series. That's what it is. And what is an iGaming operator? Well, that's a portal for games. The big difference is that what made Netflix so extremely successful is that they produced their own content. I mean, House of Cards kind of turned the Netflix story into a new story. That's an internal production. That's exclusive content. And we are seeing this. I know that Hero Gaming has this stake in a smaller studio, but perhaps one of the most interesting examples is the Danish operator Sego. They have 80% of the played content, and they're the second largest casino in Denmark, and after the Danske Spil, and they have 80% of the content is produced internally. Players love it. Players play it. Their EBITDA margin is 50%. Not 50. So, I mean, there is a Netflix in this industry. They call Sego, and of course, more and more we look at this. For me, being on the provider side, at some point, I'm also the chairman in Sego, so I can kind of balance it. But when I look at this from a Green Jade side, that is a challenge, because if every operator is doing this, less and less will take my game. Hence, once again, why we think we should go for the arcade games, because we're going to stand out there. They are a bit more difficult to build. We have a patent based on this, etc., etc. But for the slot industry as such, I think we will see fewer producers in the coming 5 years. Absolutely, producing less number of games.
So, Thomas, how do you see that? I mean, obviously, exclusive games is something that would be a USP. But do you have to produce them in-house? Is that how you position yourself?
No, but I think it can be a mix. You know, the reason why we did the investment we did last year is to basically own the whole value chain and not have a third-party supplier of it. So we have 65% in that company. And it was also due to circumstances with the right person driving it, because I think that is as important to not pretend that you will be best at building games if you're a good operator. You know, then it should be the right people doing that. But I think, you know, it can and should definitely be a mix, because there needs. Jesper mentioned the economic laws. You know, it will be impossible to start a normal like game studio, try and go to one of the aggregators, raise some funds, and then think that you're going to have a healthy business model. But maybe there will be more of a business idea where you say, okay, here we have 3 good game producers, and we set up our company, and instead we go to the big operators and we say, hey guys, this is our track record. We can build you 10 games a year. This is what we charge. That's a business model for sure.
I've seen a lot of operators actually investing and bringing on their own content, but I don't think I've ever seen it being done the other way around. Do we have any examples, known examples of game producers actually becoming operators? And
no, but that's a really interesting idea. I mean, if you have a fight out there with getting your content placed, even the big ones today have a shorter lifetime or shelf time with the games. And of course, what stops them from setting up an operator and taking the full? They can even run the operator business on zero margin as long as the games are played on that site. So yeah, it's an interesting thought. Let's see how that. I'm not sure anyone will do it, because then you kind of start a war with your biggest customer. So it will probably fall on that. But as an idea, it's an interesting idea.
Yeah, let's see what happens in this ever-changing environment. Content, and as such, I mean, that's a way of positioning yourself. And as an operator, when just before Sweden became regulated, I believe we had about 400 brands in that market of 10 million people, which was just silly, to be honest. Obviously, the threshold of becoming an operator was way too low. It's much less today, of course, which is a function of the regulation. But what about positioning? How do you position yourself? If you look at any brand and Google, it's just about the bonuses, the free spins, not really about the exclusive content. What's your take on positioning nowadays? How do you stand out in this very competitive environment?
Yeah, I think it's very, very tricky to say that you come as a newcomer into, use Sweden as an example again, into the Swedish market. You know, it will be very, very tough to build a position on that market. You can say the same in UK. Look at how many who has tried to build that position in the UK market, specifically us from the Nordics. Not that many have managed. You know, the longer into regulation we go, the less like big entrances we will see, I think. And then, you know, it goes back to experience. You need to create a product that the customers think is better than your competitors. As simple as that. It sounds simple, but when you're then providing them with the same content, it's not that easy, because the user experience you have surrounding the games is very, very limited. And that part you need to nail, because if you don't nail that, you will have worse retention rates, you can't pay the same CPAs, and you will die.
Exactly. So everyone that survives are nailing that one. So we're coming back to the core again. It's content. You need to have content that others. You need to dare to put out content there that others doesn't have, or you just follow. And either you are the leader of the pack by accident, or by being there longer than anyone else, or you are a follower. But if you dare to stand out and do perhaps develop your own content, or take in new content that no one else has, then you might have a chance.
And this is also that's also tricky. We have another JV, which is a competitor to Stryktipset, which we just soft launched on our new brand, Spel. You know, it's also scary in a way when you launch exclusive content, because you don't know, will the players like this, and the punt you need to take to really push that in marketing. You know, that's a big bet. So it's also a bit scary, like, where should you push your marketing? This is working, we have healthy retention rates, etc. Should we now start to push players, or start to try and acquire a new player group, which we don't know if we will make money on? And I think it's just to be very, you know, honest about the fact that the largest operators, they have a massive advantage when it comes to that, because they can take more, they can fail with more bets than what we can do.
And failing is extremely important in this case, because all industries that has been disrupted, they have always been at the peak. You always disrupt an industry when it is peaking. It's called the sales ship theory. We all know that. When were the sales ships replaced? They were replaced by the steam engine shippers, and this was just when they were at peak. The ships have never sailed faster, they have never been sleeker, they have never had healthier crews, etc., etc. So when you are at your peak, that's when it's time to watch out, because then normally it's a time when you are disrupted. And when you start asking those questions, should we do some more ROI, or should we start doing the conventional branding and marketing, or should we do some dare to fail, or say no to that and instead do some more conventional marketing? That's when an industry or a company is at risk of being overtaken.
Thank you, Jesper. I'd like to remind everyone that you're free to ask any questions to myself, Jesper, or Thomas at any time, of course. We'll be more than happy to answer, as long as we can. When it comes to marketing, I believe it has evolved significantly since we started. I do remember, before I moved to Malta at least, being bombarded in Sweden with 5 back-to-back commercials, whether it was radio or TV, and they all said basically the same thing: bonus, 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 and I couldn't even distinguish in between the brands. That's not the case nowadays. But how do you think marketing has evolved? Today it's digital, more or less, because we don't really do any events anymore due to the pandemic, of course. And where are we going? Where is the opportunity? It ties into your positioning, of course. And what's the challenge?
Yeah. Should I go, Jesper?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
think same there. It's when you regulate a market, it also becomes self-regulated when it comes to the marketing, because you don't have that many operators. In UK, yeah, maybe you can have more due to the fact that it has a much larger population. But then you have these massive giants who have such a big market share. But once again, using Sweden as an example, I think you will not have that many more than 20 operators who will be able to market themselves, and then when also the player values goes down due to the fact that you're working actively towards pushing the problematic gamblers so that they are not able to play anymore, that will also bring down the marketing budget. So I think that will become naturally self-regulated, and it has already been that way in Sweden, I would say. Now, I don't live there, so probably Jesper is better to answer.
Yes, no, but it becomes self-regulated, absolutely. And we can see or at least what I can see is that the tonality of the marketing has changed. It's less bonus. It's some, of course, but more responsible gaming. I think the industry realizes that you have to take the players more. You can't take them for granted. You can't just buy them cheap and then dispose of them. You have to build longer relationships with the players today. You have to focus on retention. And that starts with marketing. If you go in with bonus, then you will have a low retention. That's given, because that customer will go to the next one giving them a bonus. But if the player comes in because they love your brand or your responsible profile, then they might stay longer and they will not be attracted by the bonus offering coming from others. So I think the industry is maturing here, and we will do better and better commercial. And honestly, we've been like kindergarten when it comes to our marketing. And I can say that being and being responsible for all these campaigns that we were running, but it has been very, very simple. If you look at the many other markets, that marketing material or those campaigns are a bit more extravagant than what ours was a couple of years ago. But in Sweden, as I said, I see a change. I see this progressing and becoming a bit more robust and thoughtful marketing.
We have a question from one of our viewers, Thomas, who's asking around our thoughts about the German license. How difficult would it be for an operator to get in now? And I think I would ask you, Jesper. Mr. Green had a fairly big market share in Germany, and hopefully they still do. What would you think about the German market opportunity now as it's becoming regulated?
Oh, I think with the regulation you have, with the very limited marketing possibilities, with limited stake sizes and spin times, etc. If you're not in that market already and have a big chunk of it, it basically uses to try to get there, because the player values are too low and the hurdles are too high, etc. So what they're building an oligopoly there among the players that already has a very, very strong brand name, like Mr. Green. And then you have to live with the regulation that you do. I mean, an average, I don't remember those numbers, but the average bet size is probably a bit above the euro, which means that you will now kind of take that down to about 50 cents or 45 cents or 35 cents or whatever. And of course, instead of spinning every third second, you're spinning every fifth second. That's not a huge difference. It's more the stake sizes that I think course. The problem with the spin time is that the game gets more boring. So the big players can probably move somewhere else and play those games somewhere else. So I would, if someone came to me and said, "Jesper, could you help me? I want to launch this new German brand and I want it to be on your board," I would probably say no, because it's kind of it's a suicide mission. But if you have a position, you have a strong brand, and you're long term, of course there will be a lot of players playing, and the market will probably grow as well when it gets regulated and get legal. So once again, yes, if you are there, please go ahead.
Difficult market it is. About marketing and licensing, I do find it interesting that some of the regulated markets has actually imposed marketing bans, whether it's total like in Italy or selected like in Spain. That also complicates the benefits of a regulation, I would say, because the whole point of having a regulation is that you can do your marketing freely. You can do search engine marketing, you can do social media marketing, etc. What's your perception on that, Thomas? Because for me, it just doesn't make any sense. Why would you restrict marketing or ban marketing in doors?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, and I think the reasoning is that you try to solve a problem by putting in more limitations within an area that won't really affect the problem. Because back to the example with if it's only bad wine, will an alcoholic stop drinking wine? No. They will still do it, but the operators who actually run their business in a responsible way, they will not be able to attract more customers because they are limited with the marketing. So it's kind of, I don't get it whatsoever, and I would love to hear the reasoning behind it, because I would be surprised if there was a good, well thought through reasoning.
I mean, I can take it even further, because I would actually argue that there is no correlation between marketing and problematic gambling. Sweden has done this prevalence service for the last 30, 35 years. And when we started doing this, the measurement was 2% of the population are at risk, and approximately 0.5% are compulsive gamblers. This is 35 years ago. And the last survey did in the same way, showed the same percent. It's actually a bit lower. It's 1.8 or something like that, but that could be a statistical error. Say it's the same level. 35 years later. 35 years ago, we had Lotto, Stryktipset, some scratch cards. Today, we have gambling 24/7. We have TV commercials. We have sponsored football clubs, etc., etc. And it's still 2%. So coming there and saying that, you know what, we should ban marketing because that will protect the vulnerable players. It's like, how? I say as Thomas, please explain this to me. Show me the data. Tell me where it comes from, etc., etc. And in my opinion, it's a guess game. I wouldn't be. No, it's just crazy.
I think something that it will do now. I don't like conspiracy theories, but naturally, say that if you would stop advertising in Sweden, what that naturally would do, it would be to drive more customers towards the former state monopolies. I'm not saying that's the reason for it. I'm just saying that's very clear, because they will still be able to, they are sponsored all the national teams and stuff like this, which is, and they are exempt.
No, but the companies with the strongest brand names will always win, or grow faster after marketing ban. That's given. But the marketing ban in itself, it's just based on a hunch. It's like Trump in his politics. One day this way, and another day it's another way. So it doesn't make sense. Sorry to say.
The whole point, or at least the argument for imposing regulations, is of course to increase responsibility and sustainability, gambling responsibility. How does that need to evolve? I know that you have been very engaged in responsible gaming, Jesper, and for the last 5 years, how has it evolved and affected the industry, and where will it go, you think? And will regulation speed it up?
Yeah, but when we launched PlayScan or Spela Lagom at Svenska Spel like 15 years ago, no one understood what we were doing. It was a unique concept. Today, everyone has the same kind of models and solutions and tools and things like that. The industry has evolved so massively. It's amazing to see how professional not only the hero games and the Mr. Greens and the Kindred of the world is in this. It's becoming a natural part of the industry. It's like the car industry. When they realize that safe cars sells better than unsafe cars, it just took off. And
does it work? Does it actually work, or does it just get too difficult?
No, it works. Absolutely, it works. And it might, of course, putting on the seatbelt was more difficult than driving without the seatbelt, but people are accepting this today. And I see the same with our responsibility. But what we lack is I would like to have, Spelpass is a fantastic example. It's a state-governed tool for responsible gaming. I would put more emphasis on these things in the regulation instead of decreasing spin times or setting bet limits, etc. I would impose stronger stronger responsible gaming tools like affordability checks. Like you should have an algorithm that catches your players at risk, and if they come at risk, you should treat them at this and this and this way. That should be like a common ground for every operator.
For me, some of these regulations, it just becomes so difficult to actually entertain myself. If I want to play a game, just depositing money can just be such a big hassle. Does that tool really work? The know your customer approach, where you have to provide all kind of documentation. It's sometimes I could go to Amazon and buy whatever I want today, no questions asked, but I cannot do a deposit without going through a very large process.
I agree.
Yeah, that's also the political winds, how they are blowing. Either you can accept it or you can try and work against it, and try to work against it in a locally regulated market. I don't think is very smart. So we can obviously compare to any other consumer industry where, say, shopping clothes, over consumption when it comes to that is a much bigger problem to society than what gambling is. But still, the ice is on gambling, and we need to accept that. And if we don't proactively work with that, and as Jesper said, this industry has come such a long way when it comes to working responsible. If I look at our responsible gaming Slack channel for Sweden in the morning, it's just about now these players has been interacted with, and this is the latest set deposit limits XYZ. That's just the name of the game. If you don't like it, leave. It will not change.
Exactly. And I just have to comment on. I agree with Thomas to 100%. It's the name of the game, but it's quite interesting to see where this comes from, and that this comes from the stigmatization of gambling. For us, it's quite normal being in the dinner. Let's say the dinner with 10, 15 people, and eventually someone figures out that you are running a gaming company, and everyone goes, "Ooh, a gaming company! Tell me, you have a lot of problematic players, etc., etc." And then at quite some time, I studied the 15 questions that the Spel Institute is using to determine whether you are a risk player or not. And I memorized them. So I took this game with all these. So I asked them those questions. And that is, do you have angst playing too much? Have you ever borrowed money to gamble? Have you waken up at nights thinking about what you should do on different, etc.? It's 15 questions. And everyone is answering no. So then my conclusion is, okay, fantastic. Now return this. I just want to change one word in this test. We change gambling to buying something. And everyone got like silent and a bit red-faced, because on that they scored 10 out of 15 on the problematic scale. And so I told them, okay, this is fantastic. I don't have any problematic gamblers in this dinner, but I have 10 shopaholics. And there we are. But we are stigmatized, and we have to live with that. We have to face it. And regulation is a good thing. KYC is a good thing. And we should also remember that we are handling money on an account. We are like a bank. You make a deposit, you make a withdrawal. Of course, it has to be AML laws and regulations in relationship to that. Our job as in this industry is to make that transition and that onboarding as smooth as possible. And I think that is one of the key things where an operator can stand out. If you do all the checks and it takes like 5 seconds, you will have a much higher conversion to start with, but also retention than if it takes 7 minutes.
So positioning yourself as a very responsible gaming company wouldn't undermine your business. That's what you're saying.
No, it will grow your business. It will grow your business.
Would the same kind of rules apply to normal gaming? I mean, you have Fortnite and various types of games where you actually do a lot of deposits and you buy in-app purchases, etc., which can be very addictive. I have a son; it happens all the time, actually, and he's a kid too, so it's quite problematic from that point of view.
But this is debated right now. We see how they are running for the loot boxes and loot chests in different markets like UK and others. No, that will happen at some point, but it's not yet. It's not considered as gambling per se. It has not been here as long as gambling has, and it has not created as many problematic behaviors as gambling has yet. But I think it will come.
Do we know that? We have youngsters that plays around the clock more or less. So I wouldn't be so sure. But
But
it was also it took what did it take? 12 years for online gambling to regulate as well. These things are slow.
Yeah.
And we should remember that the only thing that really determines a problematic gambler is that the player playing for more money than he or she can afford.
So affordability again.
Time is of course an essence when you measure this, but it doesn't become a problem until it affects your finances. And that's once again why I think affordability checks should be part of the regulation.
I think we need to talk more about innovation, right? Because that is also the proof in the pudding, so to speak. What's your thoughts around innovation? We've been in the industry for more than 10 years, all of us. And what has happened? What has been the major developments, and what do you foresee happening? Jesper?
Yeah,
Thomas?
Sorry. Yeah, I think it's easy to. I've listened to a lot of panels where they say that it's very low innovation in this industry. Which yes, you can look at it from one perspective and you can say that, but then at the same time, I don't know about that many industries that are faster to adapt when it comes to our industry. So take pay and play as an example. That's a massive innovation from Trustly in this case in Sweden. But then how quickly, a whole industry kind of changed into that. And if you were slow, you had massive operators standing in their quarterly reports and said, yeah, we missed the pay and play train, and this is costing us in market share. So it's kind of, quickly changes in that way. And then a lot of it, I think there's a lot of small innovation being driven by the operators on, a weekly basis when it comes to campaigns, when it comes to retention tools, when it comes to gamification. But it's not these like massive innovations. So maybe it's not seen more than from, say, 20% of the players, from our players at Hero Gaming who loves it, but that will never be talked about as an industry innovation. So I think a lot of companies are much better at innovation than what often the talks about the industries.
Yes, you want to talk about innovation?
As you know, I have a bit of a different view on this one. I agree with what Tomas is saying. It's just semantics when I say this. The adaptability is fantastic. The development of this industry has been amazing. But we're talking about iteration, and we are making small steps. We turn them into better and better and better and better things. This is probably the most advanced phone I ever had in my hand. It's an iPhone 11. And that's not an innovation whatsoever. That's far from an innovation. The iPhone 1 was an innovation. Absolutely, because that totally disrupted the total industry. It swiped out Nokia and got other companies to crumble. That's an innovation. Since every iPhone since is an iteration. We are extremely good at that in this industry, and we should continue doing that because that's the cleverest and fastest and safest way to grow. So I'm totally agreeing with Thomas. I would say the pay and play is an innovation that kind of disrupts the payment method, and we haven't seen that many. There are some others. But the thing that I will come to here is that the risk of there's an upside of doing iteration, and that's something we should continue doing. But there's also a risk that someone will come and disrupt this industry. Perhaps not this year, perhaps not next year, but at some point there will be a disruption, and because someone is innovating something that is like, wow, we just move my entertainment from here to here. It's the same in Netflix. Netflix has not innovated anything. They're doing a lot of cool iterations in how they measure the viewers and how they recommend the other series and films, etc., etc. But that's also, in my opinion, iteration.
So we're looking forward.
Question of definition.
Yeah, it's a business of scale, and Mr. Green was acquired by William Hill last year, and now William Hill is being acquired by Caesars. Is this trend going to continue, speed up things, or what will happen? Will it be driven from the US maybe? What's your thought about that?
I think this is a natural step. Where I come from, gambling is business of scale. It started with the big incumbent operators like Svenska Spel, Danske Spel, the German state lotteries, Camelot in UK, etc. They've been there for hundreds of years. And they needed scale because the larger the pot is, the more people we play. Having a lotto pool or a lottery pool of 10,000 krona is like useless. Having a lottery pool of 200 million, wow, then people, you can't miss that chance. So this industry comes from big players, monopolies, or oligopols. And I think it's quite natural that we're going back to that. Not all the way with one state-owned operator per country, absolutely not. But having the 400 brands not really fulfilling any other mission than we can give up more bonuses than other. That is kind of rolling out now. We will see consolidations. I think, as Tomas said before, what did you say? We had 20, 30, one surviving in Sweden. I think that's a quite fair number. I think we see the same in UK, potentially perhaps a bit larger market, Germany, etc., etc. And then, of course, the big bricks and mortars after the pandemic now realizes that having some really strong presence online is a must. And hence we see this acquisition of Caesars and William Hill, because that will speed up their rollout, their US rollout when that happens. And I think it's a super clever acquisition. State by state will open up. This will be a way to finance the states post-COVID. They will open up gambling, and then you're buying something that works, you're buying something that has the infrastructure, you buy something that is already existing in your market. They just take it and then they roll it up. It's brilliant.
So do you think the land-based casinos, obviously there's been a huge shift this year from land-based to online, will they ever recoup? Will we see Las Vegas and Macau and Monaco really getting a lot of customers again and being the resorts of gaming?
I'm sure they will recoup. Probably the same thing will happen there, because we see a transformation ongoing to digital, which will hit them as well. But then what will happen then? Consolidation will happen, maybe not as many brick and mortar casinos. And I think if looking at online, regulation is happening all over Europe, and regulation that only drives consolidation, as simple as that.
We have talked a lot about the new normal 2020 due to the pandemic. What is the new normal in iGaming 2021, in your opinion? I would like to remind you also that we're running out of time, so this might be the last question for the day. Jesper?
The new normal is less opportunities. You can't go from your home country into the Europe, and then from Europe to Asia, and then from Europe to Eurasia, and then from Europe to Latin America, and then to US. That is already covered. So I think the new normal is fewer new options, and that will also drive consolidation. So the new normal for the coming 3-4 years is increased consolidation on all levels.
Yeah, I agree to that one, and then I would like also just to add that I think, unfortunately, for the coming years, over-regulation is a new normal. That hasn't stopped yet. That will just keep on going, meaning that you need to be smarter strategically. You need to really think about what you're doing and where you're putting in your money and the investments that you're doing. So I think we come from a place where 6 years ago you could invest 100 euro wherever, basically, and you got 120 or 130 back. That's not the case anymore, and you need to be really, really smart about that 100 euro.
Before we wrap it up, we have a few questions. Let me see. There is a question here from Katie, I believe. What's the most important thing a payment solution should offer specifically to the iGaming industry?
Simplicity. That it's easy for the customer.
Simplicity.
And if you really want to make a difference, you should find a way to do the KYC at the same time. Outsource KYC.
I have another question here from Tristan. Outsourced versus insourced marketing. What gives the most bang for the buck for an operator?
Depending on the market. I think is it one of your core markets? You probably need to learn that one and have the knowledge in-house, while if it's more of a new market entry, you don't know where you're getting into, if you're going to be there long term, then I think you should definitely outsource.
On a more philosophical level, since every operator are reselling the same games, your core skill is marketing. You are a marketing company, so I would say insourced to 100%. But then I agree with Thomas. If you're entering a new market, you have the insourced competence. You can outsource to that market, absolutely. But you need to. If you don't have control of your marketing competence, then it will be very difficult to succeed as a brand in this competition. I would say
that's the only thing we need to be good at. Marketing and registration flow. That's it.
Exactly. So don't never outsource what you should be good at.
No, simplicity, right?
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Jesper and Thomas. It's been an hour, more than an hour already. Sorry for that. Time flies when you're having fun. I hope everyone that participated enjoyed it as much as I did. I hope we get to do it soon again. I'd like to wrap this up and hand it over to Volodymyr for the final words before we end it. Thank you so much, all of you that came.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen, for this profound discussion. Lots of insights, lots of information to process, and I believe our listeners will agree with me if I say that it was an hour well spent. So thank you so much for finding time in your busy schedules to share your experience and expertise with us. It was truly a robust conversation. I believe we have several questions not answered. That's okay, because the thing that what I want to offer to our audience is our special opportunity. As promised, you have the chance to book personal consultation with Peter Ekmark, receive his advice, his expert opinion regarding your situation with hosting or online brand visibility. Now you can see the link in the chat box. You will be able to see it soon enough. Yes, it is here, calendly.com, Peter Ekmark. You can book a personal consultation with Peter simply by clicking on it and proceeding with all the next steps. And I believe that's it. Thank you, everyone, for being with us today. We appreciate your being with us today. Please visit our website, follow our social media pages, and we'll see you next time at the next webinar from Internet Vikings. And thank you, gentlemen, our speakers. You are truly the best. So stay tuned and stay safe and have a nice day, of course.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.